Morning, the second day of Roadmap. Very exciting. My name is Jeanette Shaw. I'm the Director of Policy here at Forth, and I use she, her pronouns. We have so many great things in store for you all today, but just a quick reminder that if you haven't downloaded our conference app, Whova, yet, please do. It's a great way to enhance your experience, your network, and to meet new friends, so we encourage you to do so. And another thank you so much to all the sponsors for their support for our roadmap. And it is now my pleasure to welcome the speakers for the session, Electric Transportation in the Global South, to the stage. Our moderator is Rebecca Fisher, the Drive Electric Campaign Director for ClimateWorks Foundation. Welcome, Rebecca. In addition, we have Silvia Rojas Soto, is the Executive Director of the Costarrican Association of Electric Mobility and the President of the Latin American Association of Sustainable Mobility. Welcome. Priti Shukla is the Program Manager for the Electric Mobility Program at the Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation in India. And Hiten Parmar is the eMobility Strategic Advisor from South Africa. Please put your hands together and give our friends, our panelists, and our speakers a warm welcome. Welcome, and we look forward to your discussion. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Jeanette, and thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to Forth and, of course, all of the sponsors today. We're so excited to speak to you today about the electrification of transportation in the Global South. And I wanted to state, before we even start in our amazing discussion with these amazing experts here, to acknowledge that the term Global South is not a perfect term. It's not the perfect way of describing the type of countries that we're working in and that we're representing here today, but it's the term that we're using because it's all-inclusive of the work that we're doing. Others have used terms like emerging economies, low to middle income countries. So just to acknowledge on the outset that Global South is not a perfect term, but we will use it in our discussions today, interspersed with things like emerging economies and other types of terms. So with that said, I would like to welcome all of you three to the stage with me. It's amazing to see you all. It's almost like I'm here with my friends having a conversation, and I hope you guys feel that way too. This is a plug right at the beginning to please put any questions you have for us in the app. I have an iPad here that I'll be looking at throughout the discussion to make sure that we're bringing you into this discussion. So please do put questions in the app. And we really want to make you feel like you're part of this debate today. So one of the things that we really wanted to do with this plenary session today is take a step back, right? Roadmap, the term roadmap, is about building a series of steps towards a goal. And our goal is 100% electrification. And roadmap has traditionally focused on the electrification of transportation in the US. We've heard from so many amazing experts over the past several days around how to make charging infrastructure more equitable, where to site it, how to make sure that there's a used EV market in the US, and various other topics. And one of the things that we'd like to bring to the conversation today is the inspiring stories from leadership in emerging economies, in India, in Africa, and in Costa Rica and Latin America. And we really want to show that there are roadmaps all over the world and that there's leadership in various countries going fast, if not faster, than what we're seeing here in the US. So I hope this is an inspiring panel for you today, and I'm really excited to hear from the three of you. So I'm going to go ahead and kick off with a focus on the types of government regulations that have really spurred a lot of the adoption of electric vehicles. And I'll turn to Silvia first. So one of the things that I want to ask you, Silvia, is, well, first, congratulate you. So Costa Rica last year has the highest EV share of any country in the Americas at just over 7%. That's amazing. That's really amazing.
Thank you. Yes, it is amazing, and it's because of the work we are doing from several sectors, because we do it together from all the sectors, private sectors, public sectors, academia, and of course, drivers. So thank you, it's a pleasure to be here. Good morning, everyone. And first thing I would like to say is that Latin America and Costa Rica is ready for electric mobility. We are ready for zero emissions mobility. And a crucial thing that I want to say is that in Latin America, we are producers of renewable electricity. So that makes perfect sense for us to drive an EV because we can feed it with clean energy. And not only clean electricity, it's electricity that we produce in our countries. And that is good for our national economies. And talking about public policy, in Costa Rica, we have our national decarbonization plan. That is our roadmap, you know. And this plan proposes to decarbonize our economy by 2050. And of course, it includes transportation sector. And because of that, we have a law since 2018 that is to promote 100% electric vehicles, not other transitions technologies. We only promote 100% electric vehicles. So we have some incentives, and we're working daily on that, sir. It's not a finished work, as you know. So we're working on that every day, and it's important that we have these numbers because we decided 5 years ago to promote only 100% electric vehicles. And now this law have really attractive incentives, economic incentives and non-economic. For example, in Costa Rica, if you buy a 100% electric vehicle, you don't pay for taxes, and it could mean up 45% of the value of the vehicle. So that is a really attractive incentives when people go and look for the offer and buy. And we also use green license plates, for example, and that has an amazing visual effect because on road you see a car with green license plate and you know it is electric, so people start thinking, okay, that car seems nice, it looks safe, comfortable, it's fast, it's even better than my ICE car. So that is important too. And we don't have restriction, we can drive our EV any day on the week. And of course, our public policy includes charging points. That is really important. And our law established that the electricity companies have to install the fast chargers. And also the law established the distance. So that is why you can see our map and you will see fast chargers all over the national territory. And that is important for us, the drivers, and that is an important incentives when people go and buy. So they think, I can save 45% of what I'm paying. I'm going to have a safe, nice, zero emissions vehicle. I know where I can charge. Even we charge on our home, you know, but if I go to large distances, going to the beach in Costa Rica or going to the mountains, I can stop and charge my car, so that is important too. And also there is happening great things in Latin America, not just in Costa Rica, and I want to mention Chile. Chile banned ICE cars by 2035. And in Latin America, now the other countries, we are trying to do the same because we have to.
Thank you so much, Silvia. That was really inspirational. That's great. And your points really highlight the need to do both the carrots and the sticks, right? We can't just give away the free government money in the form of incentives. We also have to back that up with these policy goals like Chile has done and that will hopefully roll out across Latin America. So I'd like to turn Hiten to you now. And you've worked on a ton of really, really amazing public-private partnerships in Africa and particularly in South Africa. Could you speak to the type of government policies and regulations and even kind of regimes that have helped spurred those public-private partnerships?
Yeah, good morning, Jambo, Sanbonani, and Namaste. So my greeting to you was also reflecting that this is what we need to really embrace in the global transition to electric mobility. It's a pleasure to join everybody here today and acknowledging Forth for putting this event together and having this really interesting and very topical discussion today in the Global South and looking at where North America has its journey, but what are the other regions and reflections in other regions, in other countries. South Africa has a very active market within the automotive industry. It started in 1924 with the production of the Ford Model T, and pre-COVID, 6.9% contribution to GDP. So it's a really active market from a manufacturing perspective. Government really have the role of creating an enabling environment. And with that visionary, we have a National Development Plan of 2030, where Chapter 5 specifically speaks to a carbon and climate resilient society. The problem with that, and if we look at 2030, it's just 6.5 years away, it's the lack of implementation and coordination. And I think this is the thing, what's really important to see in terms of that. So once we have these consultations and paper developments and strategies, it's fair enough in acknowledging that. But the key merit and action on the ground is taking that paper into action. And that's what some of the stumbling blocks on that. So we acknowledge that as a vision. The other problem perspective is also the multi-department approach to say, that's the key anchor document for the country. How are the other national departments going to align to that and implement as well? So that's the South African perspective. So based on that, because of the strong automotive manufacturing industry, the transition towards new energy vehicles is slightly on a stumbling block with that. But if you're looking at other African countries that don't have an active automotive manufacturing sector, they are really forward-moving and forward-thinking into moving to electric mobility. Zimbabwe, for example, has a clear electric mobility roadmap strategy. On the flip side, they've got fifth largest reserves of lithium in the world. Through that, the regional integration between the presidents are also starting to look at collectively driving the battery economy from the mineral resources in terms of that. Ghana has got a strong roadmap policy for electrification. So we're starting to see the right signals coming in. It's still early days, but with that, I think where we see countries like Europe, North America that are advanced, they have certainly learned lessons with that. And this is what needs to be shared to the emerging economies and emerging markets so that they don't make the same mistakes that happened in Europe and North America. And this is where the strengthened collaboration, the engagements, the shared experiences. Yesterday we had the sessions of equity. Very, very relative topic in Africa. And as it's being discussed here, we need to make sure that all of the societies, the economies in all these other regions are not disadvantaged as we take on this approach. So I think those are some key points to get the conversation started. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Hiten. That was really insightful because it is true, right? There is a different approach in each country, in each state even. A lot of us here know in the United States, every state is taking a different roadmap to zero-emission transportation. It's the same in places like Africa. It's the same in places, of course, like India. So, Priti, I'll transition to you, right? So I visited you recently in India and got to take trips to 3 different Indian states, and it was truly amazing to see that there is a vast differences between the states, and there's also a vast difference between how the states are approaching EVs and trying to inspire the adoption of EVs. I was wondering if you could share with us today kind of the top 3, if you will, states and how they're each implementing on EVs in their region.
Right. Thank you, Rebecca. And greetings and namaste from India, and thank you for having me here. I'll just take a cue from Rebecca and I mean, what she mentioned a few minutes back. Every state is approaching EV adoption differently in the states, and that's not very different on how we're doing it in India. So in India, we have around 29 states, and almost 26 of them have their own EV policies. So while there is an overarching framework at the national level, each state has drafted their own EV policy with their own EV targets, while some are focusing on the demand side incentives, the other focus on the supply side and manufacturing of things. The top 3 states in India really to highlight out here at the international platform are Delhi, Meghalaya, and Gujarat. And I'll start with Delhi, which is the capital of the country, and it's my hometown as well. So Delhi has many of its firsts, and talking across various vehicle segments, I don't think Delhi has left any stone unturned to fasten their electric adoption by 2030. So it's the first state in India to have its own target set, and having addressed 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers, 4-wheelers, buses, and even the cab aggregators at a vehicle segment level. So while there are many incentives and subsidies for two-wheelers and three-wheelers, the one unique thing that I would want to highlight and which really draws attention to the international stage is its motor vehicle cab aggregator scheme, which has just been which is just going to be announced and will be implemented from 2023 onwards. What it does is it has mandated all cab aggregators to transition to EVs by 2030, which is, I think, a remarkable feat for a country like India and for a state like Delhi, which struggles from air pollution and a lot of the stubble burning, SOx and NOx emissions coming out of the crop burning. So this is something that I would want to highlight. So what the cab aggregator scheme does is it's putting an incremental approach on the two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and the four-wheelers to transition their fleet year by year in an incremental fashion and phase out to EVs. Along with that, it's also putting up a penalty on on a purchase of a new ICE vehicle. So that, and it's also waiving off EV registration fee. So that's just helping us push from ICE vehicles to EVs. And with 4 years from now, around 75% of Delhi's EV fleet is going to be electric. So it gives me really pleasure and a proud moment to say this, that Delhi is just pioneering the EV revolution in India. And a lot of states are looking up to Delhi EV policy. It was also marked as one of the best practices at the national level, published by the Government of India. I would also like to mention states like Meghalaya and Gujarat with something unique that they're doing at their front. So Meghalaya has something called as a Meghalaya EV Adoption Fund, where they are penalizing old ICE vehicles and putting that money into the fund, and that fund is now advocating EV at the state level. So that is something, and it follows the polluter pays principle. So it really, fastens the adoption of EVs. The last and the third one that I would like to mention here is the state of Gujarat, where cities like Surat, which are very high or intense industrial cities, are making their own city EV plans. And by adopting low emission zones and promoting healthy air zones in the city itself. And the first action in that implementation plan is now they're transitioning their solid waste trucks to EVs. So that's a big thing at the state level, where each state is trying to do their own thing and are trying to fasten the EV adoption at the country level. So yeah, that's something that I would like to say. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Priti. That's great. A round of applause for Delhi, too. It's amazing. And there was a great question in the app that said, what can we learn here in the US from the work that you're doing? And I think that's a great example of the zero emission zones, the city level work. You're doing it, and it's something that is so difficult to do here in the United States. So any feedback for those of us working in that space on zero emission zones?
So I must say that zero emission zones hasn't been easy in India as well, but taking baby steps, we're trying to incorporate and say that out in our EV policies, especially for the zones which are highly polluted or have a lot of SOx and NOx emissions in and around the area. In Delhi, and Delhi has again been the first one, Delhi is trying to do this in an area called Mehroli, which is, it's home to a lot of migrant population as well as some few historical sites. So it's really challenging for the Delhi government to carry out this, but I think they're taking baby steps. So, so they're looking at vehicle, access restrictions. They're looking at if they can transition the cargo fleet entering that area into EVs, and working with the Shunya campaign that I might talk about later. They're partnering with the Shunya campaign to have the last mile deliveries to be electric.
Great, thank you so much. And that's a great question. And I think one of the other things that's really coming out to me, at least from all three of your interventions, is that there are some unique kind of fiscal policies that perhaps the US and states aren't fully utilizing to help spur EV adoption. Things like tariff regimes or these like kind of congestion charges, which some cities are using. There are these unique ways that aren't your traditional like ZEV mandate or fuel efficiency standard, but that can really accelerate EV adoption. So that's really, really helpful context. I'll transition this conversation to talk a bit about the business side of electrification of transportation. And Hiten, maybe I'll start with you. This kind of touches upon a question that's in the app around the energy side of things in South Africa and how the grid is having some difficulties. But first, I want to ask, we together visited this, I think, 120-year-old bus company outside of Cape Town that is really keen on going all electric. And for such a deep-rooted old company to see this as the frontier for them is truly inspirational. And I wonder if you could just share with us their story, why they're going all EV, and then also maybe I'll share a bit of the story, which is they're not worried about the grid. They're not worried about the energy and the electricity. They think that it's possible. But I'd love to hear your take on the story, Hiten.
Great, thanks. So I think I'll just want what Priti shared, I'll also bring that into context as well. Part of our reflections within emerging economies, I think it was 2018, there was a global news agency that profiled breathing air in Delhi is equivalent to smoking 44 cigarettes a day. What's that reflection for the non-smokers? I visited Delhi 4 months ago, the air is clear. So you can see with that commitment to banning ICEs by 2030 from the presidency office and the other leadership activities, that's what's been achieved. In South Africa, Johannesburg is ranked 13th in the world as worst polluted city. So these are the key reflections that are really on the ground in South Africa for that and other developing nations. You can literally see a brown haze that exists over many of the big capital cities within South Africa. So to the point, and I think our green transport strategy in South Africa highlights that 91.2% of emissions within transport are from road transport, primarily from the combustion of petrol and diesel. The challenge also that's contributing to that is our poor fuel quality, which is still at Euro 2. Now, if we look at this energy transition, there was an analysis done. If we had to transition from Euro 2 to Euro 6, it'll only provide 14% saving on greenhouse gas emissions. Transitioning to EVs with our coal-intensive grid that we have at the moment provides 34% saving on emissions. If we charge through renewables, 67% efficient. So this is what we see, the debunking of this myth that's also highlighted there in the South African context, and also addressing what is the framework of charging EVs through the current grid, which is also coal-intensive. Extending on that South Africa over the past 13, 14 years has reached high levels of energy crisis. Aged energy generation infrastructure is what's happening, some maladministration from maintenance on that. But we've really got a real crisis. It's called load shedding. Typically, the schedules change every day, and up to 6 to 7 hours, there's no grid in certain areas. That crisis actually catapulted the renewable energy industry. In 2021, South Africa was the 6th largest market for residential energy storage. So this crisis has deployed so much renewables, specifically rooftop solar, backed by storage to strengthen the grid out of this crisis. But if we look at electric mobility, what is that scenario? It's created the ideal scenario in decoupling the grid, increasing renewables for not only commercial and residential activities, but a best case scenario for EV charging. So many homeowners, many businesses and industrial applications have already got rooftop solar in that case. And like Rebecca highlighted, the one company in Cape Town, really well-established bus operator, 1,500 fleets of buses. They've been in a transition over the last 2 years into considering electric mobility. The biggest stumbling block in the boardroom was the CFO. Wasn't convinced on electric. We assisted them. We did the pilot over 9 months. They got the data. 70% savings on operational costs. 30% saving on maintenance cost. Now, the engineers are stuck trying to please the CFO because when are we getting more electric trucks? They just signed an order for 60 electric buses with local assembly. So this is where we see the transformation. And I think the last order that they placed a few months ago was their last ICE bus. So those are the key things that we're seeing. We're also seeing developers starting to look at this based on the energy crisis. What is the flip side? They are starting to develop projects looking at solar, storage, charge infrastructure, and financing of fleets of EVs. So this is where we see this side. So it's important to note that, like in Africa, the biggest question when you're addressing electric mobility, what about the energy crisis? So what? We've got the solutions in storage, renewables, coupled with the right infrastructure. We can then deploy that into the markets. In the rural areas and cases where there's not a lot of development, we're then seeing the opportunities of microgrids and then purpose-built electrification to provide energy access, mobility access to disadvantaged communities. So this is how we're starting to see this whole mix and solutions come into play.
Thank you so much, Hiten. It's such a powerful story of how, if you just look at the news coming out of South Africa, you'd think that the grid stability is a huge stumbling block, a huge barrier for electrification in South Africa. But when you talk to folks actually doing the pilots, actually rolling out electric vehicles, it's not a concern. They don't see that as a concern for the future. And it truly just shows you that if you dig deep enough, you will find folks who know the answers, have found the solutions, and are already making it work. So it's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Priti, I'd like to turn back to you to share another really inspiring private sector story. One of the fun things that we did together was take these electric vehicle cabs in Delhi called Blue Smart. And they're these beautiful vehicles that essentially just like an Uber or Lyft, but they're a full fleet of all electric. And there's a few differences in the business model from the Uber and Lyfts that we're all familiar with. But I wonder if you could share with us the Blue Smart story, but also talk a bit about what led Blue Smart to being so successful and what you see on the horizon.
Sure. Thanks, Rebecca. And I hope you had a wonderful ride when you were in Delhi. So Blue Smart is, really riding on high voltage in Delhi at the moment. So it's one of the most popular cabs that now people like you and me would want to ditch for Uber and Olas. They're the first electric cab fleet in India, and they're currently present only in 2 cities, Delhi and Bengaluru. They have around 320 plus cars, which are electric, and they intend to scale up to almost 800 to 1,000 by end of this year. So they're going up in a big way. They're an EV startup that started in 2015. They started with 20 cabs in Delhi, and not many of us knew about Blue Smart until they scaled up. So Blue Smart runs on a very on a B2C model, business to customer model, and it's in a very it runs how it is apart from Uber is it runs on a very asset light model. They have their EV cabs on lease, and while I was lucky enough to meet one of the founders of Blue Smart, and what they mentioned was what the motto behind the success of Blue Smart in Delhi has been like, if the drivers are happy, we are happy. So the drivers' satisfaction is something that they really played on, coupled with their B2C model B2C model of the cabs. So while Uber and Ola drivers were really stressed out and high working hours and did unsatisfactory rides. The feedback of Blue Smart cab drivers has just been phenomenal. They even have women drivers on the fleet, which is very unusual in a country like India to have. They're quite trained. They are trained for a month, and they really give you a 5-star services when you're in the cab. So, but what has really helped Blue Smart scale up is the direct relation to the customers. You can only book in Blue Smart cab through an app, and it doesn't have any other leeway on how you can book cabs, while Uber and Ola are doing that in India as of moment. Blue Smart really goes and sells its rides through the app, and it's just a business-to-customer relation. Being a startup, they have raised over $250 million already, and they intend to expand to other cities. They also have the intercity rides that we just, one of the rides that we really took from Delhi to Jaipur, which was around 400 kilometers. And they have Tata, Mahindra, BYD, all of them on their fleet. So Blue Smart is really revolutionizing the electric cab business in India. And seeing Blue Smart, we do have other players in the market, Evera, Snap Cabs, who are trying to, hunch their backs and, get up in the game. But Blue Smart has really, really revolutionized the cab business in India. People are really looking up to the Blue Smart model. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much, Priti. And this really emphasizes the fact that drivers come first, right? We talk a lot about jobs in this just transition. And something we heard from different startups in Kenya, where they have swappable battery two-wheelers, to the Blue Smart drivers, to the example of the e-bus that you shared. The drivers on these apps and in these business models that are driving EV are making more money, have a better quality job life, and are just happier in general. And that's something that I think is easy to not see in our day-to-day when we're pushing regulations or incentives, right? We're also trying to ensure that this just transition also provides good quality, enjoyable jobs. So that's really helpful, and it's something that I got to experience firsthand in talking to the driver that we drove for about 4 hours with, without needing to charge, and he said he's more respected as an EV cab driver than when he was driving around a diplomat in an ICE vehicle. Just to kind of give you that tangible comparison, it's really impressive. So I'd like to shift, Silvia, to hear from you. And what we've heard from Priti and Hiten are around kind of the entrepreneurship that's happening in the private sector. And zooming out to the larger kind of multinational auto OEMs, thinking about how are they showing up in Costa Rica, right? So Costa Rica doesn't produce cars in country or autos in country. You import most of them. So that creates a unique dynamic that's different from South Africa and India and the United States. And I'm just curious, how are those multinational OEMs showing up in Costa Rica? Are they positively impacting your electric vehicle trajectory, perhaps negatively impacting that trajectory?
Thanks for the question. Well, actually, people are not waiting. I mean, in Costa Rica, we have a good offer, but it's because people are continuously asking to the cars dealers, I want to drive an EV. So last year we had really good numbers. In December, we had 10.6% of the new registered cars were 100% electrics. And that happened because people wanted to do the change. So what is happening in the whole Latin America is that people go to the agency or the car dealers, ask for an EV model, and if they don't find it, they look outside, import the EV. So that is a call for for the cars dealers. You're losing a business in Latin America because people is ready and want to do the change. So what people are doing is looking for the car that they want on internet. Mainly, they import from China and United States, of course, and that's why we have these numbers. So we are working to have better offer because we need better offer. There is a lot of offer on the whole world, and Latin America seems to be the last place to send the EVs. So people are looking for them. So that is the good news. And talking about business, electric mobility is a great opportunity for new business, new jobs in Latin America. And of course, we almost always talk about charging solutions, charging points. Of course, that is important. But for example, in Costa Rica, we are having other activities, economic activities around zero emissions mobility. For example, batteries. Yesterday, I was listening to the session about batteries. It was really interesting. And of course, we need to make better batteries. But we also need to start talking about the second life of the battery, recycling batteries. That is a business. I mean, in Costa Rica, we have this project. They have already received only 2 batteries. Don't imagine we have mountains of batteries. Because, and that's happening because people that have an EV from 2014, 2015, they don't need to change their battery yet. Their cars, their batteries are okay, are still okay. So this project has received 2 batteries. And they could take the 85% of these 2 batteries and convert golf carts from combustion to electric. That is a business. And then the other 15%, they could recover 98% of the minerals of the batteries. That is money. That is a business. So we need to start talking about the battery, not just, of course, we have to make them better, but we also have to discover that other economic opportunities around the car. It's not only the way we move. We're talking about a new economy, an economy around zero emissions mobility. So we are trying to do that in Latin America. I was reading some of the questions, and there was once that somebody asked about the stakeholders, how can you help? Where you can help going to Latin America, to India, to Africa, and discover new business. It's not just manufactured cars, it's not just installing chargers. We have to fund the whole cycle of the EV, of the EVs. And that is just one part. The offer, the batteries and new economies, but our big challenge in Latin America is public transport. We need to electrify public transport. So we are working with the public sector, but of course the investment from the private sector is crucial. So we need alliance between private sector, public sector. We need to start working together on electrifying our public transport system. There is some countries such as Colombia, Chile, Mexico, they are leading the electric buses, not only buses, electric train systems. But there is the rest of the region that we need help, and we are trying to do this alliance and to participate the private sector because the investment of the private sector is crucial. We need it. So we are working on that. We are working also on trucks, of course. And not only to electrify trucks, but discovering the saves for the companies, the better conditions for the workers. You know, that the whole ecosystem that we need to see, not just to point on the cars, on the charging. We need to see the whole map and discover all that economic opportunities. So I don't want to talk about the people yet, but I think that the power from the people is crucial too, because when you see people asking for EVs, asking for charging points, making questions about the battery, so you can see that the actors, the main actors, have to take decisions, have to move. And that is priceless because sometimes you can see that the public sector is moving because people are pushing them. And that is happening in Latin America as well as in other parts. And as in other parts of the world, what Latin America always needs is financial. Financial is the mainly challenge we have, but we know that we can do it working with the private sector, public sector, the drivers, people asking, looking for the offer, looking for the new business, looking for the new jobs. So we have to understand the electric mobility, and we're doing that way in Latin America in terms of environmental, of course, in terms of health, but also in terms of economy and the good opportunities we have. We have a lot of challenges, but there is a lot of good opportunities around zero emissions.
Great, thank you so much, Silvia. And I just wanted to pick up on a point that you mentioned there. Last year, Costa Rica hit over 10% EV, new car sales were EV. 10%.
Yeah,
that's
10.6%.
Yeah.
And this year, we already have the total of from the 2022, we already have that numbers on 2023, so we are expecting at least double, but I think triple the EVs enter.
That's amazing, and it just, really does emphasize that emerging economies are demanding electric vehicles. There's this misinformation that incumbent interests likes to push out there that the global south isn't ready for electrification. That will be the market that we continue to sell fossil fuel vehicles in because they're not ready, because of a lot of the problems that you hear. The grid isn't stable enough, or we don't have models that are right for the local context. All of that, I hope, is proven to be false from this conversation here today. The global south, emerging economies are ready to lead. They're already leading. Super impressive statistics coming out of Costa Rica, India, and in Africa. And I just wanted to double down on that point. I also wanted to mention, too, that there's this question that came in around what can we do here in the U.S. to help support your transition. And one of the kind of dirty little secrets of the auto industry is that a lot of the northern nations export our dirtiest vehicles for a second life in emerging economies. And really curbing that, stopping it at the source, is a key policy that we as eMobility advocates here in the US can support. It keeps the materials here in the US, allows us to scrap and recycle and create a better circular economy. And that's something that I think we've all talked about before in different conversations, and that we can all do to really help support this acceleration. With that, I'd like to shift to this people-powered kind of component of the e-mobility transition in Africa and India and Costa Rica. And Priti, maybe I'll start with you to talk about the Shunya campaign that you had briefly mentioned before, and really explain to us what is the Shunya campaign and how does it capitalize on the power of people?
So Shunya campaign is a campaign led by RMI and Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog is the government think tank in India. So it was launched in 2021, and Shunya campaign basically focuses on zero-emission last-mile deliveries. Now, Shunya, the word in Sanskrit, means zero. So basically, they are focusing on zero tailpipe emissions, and hence they are advocating and promoting zero last-mile deliveries through. They're promoting last-mile delivery through zero-emission vehicles, and which is basically electric. So when Shunya campaign was launched in 2021, it had somewhere around 32 partners. But last year, when it completed an year, like Shunya at 1 year, they have around 140 partners on board. So these are, and the partners are all like their corporates, their EV manufacturers, companies, even some of the state governments that are partners with the Shunya campaign. And what Shunya campaign really focuses on is 3 basic elements. They look out for corporate branding. They promote electric vehicles through campaigns. and then they provide support through resource toolkits where people like you and me can probably hook on to one of their experts and say, hey, we want to go electric. How can you help? Like, how can you help us transition to an electric fleet? So in terms of corporate branding, they kind of advocate it through a logo or a messaging where your fleet gets a sticker, and that really promotes like that you are really conscious of the environment. And I don't know, I wish we could have picture on the screen, but it does have a logo like this, which means like, you're doing zero emissions through this vehicle. So that's really interesting that is now generating a lot of awareness among the users and the general public in India that, hey, if we had our parcels delivered through one of the Shunya partners, we might be promoting ZEVs in the country. So that is how Shunya is, trying to get a lot of visibility, and then through partnerships with corporates, and I think Amazon and Flipkart have already started, even apps like even aggregators like Zomato are now using the Shunya campaign and having their agents take deliveries through electric bikes. So that's something that, is happening through Shunya. But at a philanthropy level, we are trying to inject, as many points of inject ZEVs at as many points as we can, and through our mission of lifestyle for environment, which our Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, he promotes. He has probably kind of declared it at COP last year. Promotes the people's approach, where you think about sustainability at all points, and a lifestyle for environment mission is also kind of boosting and helping all these conversations to lead and transition to electric mobility in India.
Great, thank you, Priti. And that gets to one of the questions that we had in the app, which is around the 2- and 3-wheeler space. And Shunya is really key in accelerating that in the regions that it's been rolled out. And it's essentially as if we had a green mode for Postmates or something like that here in the States, where you could select to pay maybe $1 more, but know that your Postmate delivery was in an EV or on an e-bike rather than in a combustion vehicle. So it is a really powerful demand side tool. Yeah. All right, so I'll shift now to maybe Silvia, back to you to chat a bit about charging infrastructure. So we're going to do a little pivot, and you, through your organization Alamos, the Latin American EV Association, have kind of built out this charging infrastructure all across Latin America. And I wonder if you could share the story of how that came to be, and also kind of your future plans for that rollout.
Yes, for sure. Well, first tell you about Alamos. Alamos is the Latin American Association for Sustainable Mobility. We are 14 countries working together. And now, as Moe, we have the presidency of Alamos for this year, 2023. And we are expanding our Central America electric road. This was a big project that we had last year on 2022, last November actually. We did this Central America electric road. We worked with 6 countries, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, with the governments, with the private sector, of course, with drivers. So we installed fast and semi-fast chargers on the 6 countries. And that was amazing because we went on driving on our cars, 10 cars, 10 EVs. We crossed 5 borders. We had a lot of activities on the capitals, and that was amazing because people came, asked about the cars, test our cars, drive them. So that was amazing because we have to bring technology to people. And that was one of the objectives of these activities. So for this 2023, we're doing 3 phases more. First, Mexico to Guatemala. And then we're going to Panama, to Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. So there we're going to have 10 countries connected, so you can drive with your EV without a problem from Mexico till Peru. And the last part is going to be Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, the south of Brazil, and Paraguay. So we are doing this because it's important that people can see that we are ready, that we can drive your EV through the Latin America region. And that is an activities from people, you know, working with the whole sectors, but our activities from people. And that is really important for us from Asomove and Alamos. And we are not also working on that. We do a lot of activities the whole year. We have festivals, we have e-rides, and we all this because we want people to be close to us and ask about the EVs. And it's not only about the car, as I said, but because it's important to know about our experience. We are not sellers talking to people, we are drivers talking to people. And there we have a big opportunity. So people can ask about the different models we have and can ask about our experiences. Of course, they're sometimes bad experience, of course, not everything it's good, you know, but it's safe to listen that from us, the drivers. So we are working on this on Alamos, on Asomove, and we will continue because, as I said, people every day ask, I want you to be on my local government, I want you to be on my community, please come next week, I want to have a chat with you, I want to know more. So that is amazing, and we have a lot of work working with people and working with public policy, with charging points, with the transport, public transport, but we have to focus on people. So from these associations, from the 14 countries, we are doing that. And with the electric roads, we expect that even more people be close and ask, and not only ask about the EVs, but ask to have more offer and to have more opportunities because they really want to do that change.
Yeah, it's truly amazing, the coalition that you've built at Asomove and at Alamos. Not only is Silvia doing the outreach to the community and sharing the stories of what is driving electric like, but also then translating that into that upward voice of bringing the voice of the EV drivers to the policymakers and to the industry to really show that there is demand and it exists, and to influence things in a way that is supportive of the EV drivers. It's really powerful, and it kind of nicely segues, Hiten, over back to you to talk a bit about the kind of coalition that's in South Africa pushing for eMobility. And I wonder if you could just share with us what that coalition looks like and what they're working on.
Yeah, thanks. So I think, you know, electric mobility, electric vehicles is starting to embrace many organizations in terms of that. They're starting to put that into their portfolios in terms of expanding the necessary work, the lobbying work, the reporting and those sort of frameworks within that. But through that, we see, you know, the regional organizations being established, local country organizations as well, non-profit organizations on that, driving the specific agenda. But then also opportunities for global collaboration in terms of the funding, philanthropy work, and advocacy work in terms of that, and also sharing of best practices. So we're starting to see that come up within that, opportunities for collaboration. We also have the Global Sustainable Mobility Partnership that is doing regional projects and collaboration with nonprofits and things like that. So now we're starting to see a lot more sensitization in terms of emerging economies and how did this global collaboration work together. Silvia highlighted that financing is one of the key mechanisms on that. Certainly agree. but there's also the other market analysis reports, policy advocacy, technical assistance. Those are other pillars of instruments and collaboration that we then can strengthen markets from those perspectives. So it's really a collaborative approach across the various types of organizations and entities within that, and advocacy into legacy groups like the auto manufacturers that are, quite vested in their legacy, the component industry as well, automotive components, and how do we bridge this gap into a sustainable transition? Through that, South Africa has also got the Just Energy Transition Partnership, supported by an $8.5 billion investment. And this is type of we get to see global commitments into managing the energy transition. So we do acknowledge that. I think there needs to be strengthened efforts into transport, because really transport moves goods and peoples. And when you look at what emission reduction potential within that, if we can strengthen those, we can achieve greater impact with that.
Great, thank you so much. Priti, do you
Yeah,
want to add?
I would just like to come in here and talking about coalitions. It also reminds me of, apart from Shunya, we are also doing something named eFast in India, where a lot of partners are now coming up, and not only philanthropy and civil society organization partners, but also industry partners, where they are now really excited about the electric transition and want to experiment on 2 different use cases that can, if, EVs can be supported on different use cases, like for the mining industry, for the dairy industry, even something with the Indian Postal Services that's happening. So I would just say that the coalitions and the discussions at the national level are really amping the game and really getting everyone to transition to electric vehicles. We also have, and talking about coalitions, we also have an Indian ZEV Alliance, which really gets people to talk more and discuss more about the real-time challenges and how each state with their EV policy can have the best in the game, not only in 2-wheelers and 3-wheelers, but also in the freight segment, where we talk about the medium and heavy-duty segment. So they are also convening, like the Indian ZEV Alliance tries to convene at the subnational level, which really brings out the various challenges and opportunities and how we can move forward in the game. And just to highlight one bit of, instance at one of the meetings in the ZEV Alliance that I attended, states like Tamil Nadu, who are really into manufacturing of, their state EV policies promotes manufacturing and creation of a lot of jobs. They have, they are now moving to developing eMobility parks, which makes general, citizens even more aware of how we can really have, EVs being scaled up, and also on how we can recycle, reuse, and as Silvia also mentioned, really focus on the second life of batteries. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much, Priti. And I think, it's clear that there are all of these amazing stories, good news stories that are coming out of your countries and regions where there's amazing progress happening. And one of the things that I want to do, we just have a couple minutes left, is shift to a slightly perhaps more provocative topic, which is opposition. And there's a few questions in the app around what are the biggest barriers that you see. And I thought maybe we'd do a quick lightning round, just maybe 1 or 2 sentences each, on what are the biggest barriers and oppositional forces that you're seeing in your region. And we'll end on a positive note, don't worry, but this just quickly, because I do think those are really good points that have been raised in the app. Does anyone want to start first? Or should we just go?
I can go first. Of course. We had a lot of oppositives on the whole region, and a lot of myth, a lot of fake news, of course, and a lot of questions. Some good questions, some other questions. We need to difference the questions, and we need to know where are they going to, because it's safe to receive questions from people. How is the EV? Is it safe? What about the battery? That is safe questions, I would say. But then there are people saying, we're not ready. Where am I going to charge? We don't have chargers. And it's like, we are going to charge on our homes. I mean, I charge on my home. I don't need charger points. Of course, I need to be safe on road, maybe, but we don't need the whole country with charger points. So I think, first of all, we need to differentiate the safe questions. And of course, we have a lot of oppositive people saying we need to wait, we need technologies, transitions technologies. And as I said, in Costa Rica, we took a really good decision 5 years ago to promote just 100% electric vehicles. But there is continuously people saying, no, but we need, see that person, the woman that he wrote on the newspaper that she couldn't find a charger point. That happens almost all weeks. All weeks you can read that kind of sections on the newspapers. So we need to say from Asomove, for example, come here. We are a community. We can help you. Now that you have an EV, let us help you. Let us explain you where can you charge. So that is the role that we have from the drivers. And it's important that we daily work to inform correctly, because there are a lot of fake news saying we're not ready. So we, the drivers, have to demonstrate, no, we are ready and we are doing. And I'm driving an EV, so if I can do it, you can do it too. Just let me give you the right information. So that is a continuous work. And as you say, we try to influence, but actually we try to give them information on the Congress, on the media, always looking what they're doing, what they are discussing. And so we are asking for spaces to tell them, to give them our experience. And that is a really important role from the community, the drivers community. Let us give you the right information. Let us give you my experience. Listen to a driver. Don't listen to somebody that is talking about the electric mobility and he even drive an EV or he even test an EV. So that is important that we from the drivers, we do a continuous work daily. It's daily.
Yes, yeah, and we are all familiar with misinformation here in the U.S., so we completely understand that it is a daily struggle, and from conversations that we've had, a lot of the misinformation, or a good chunk of it, is also from outside influence, too. So it is truly, you do have this bifurcated market at the OEM level where you'll have a company pushing EVs in some markets and pushing against EVs in others. And it really is this persistent, pernicious problem. Okay, Priti, over to you.
Yeah, so I'll just go very quickly. And I'll go segment-wise, because there are different opposition segment-wise. I mean, there are various challenges. On the two-wheeler segment, it's similar like Costa Rica on the safe questions about battery and safety. On the four-wheeler segment, it's about financing and range anxiety. Okay, will my car be able to do intercities? What if I don't have charging points? So those are the kind of questions that are coming up. But the biggest and the strongest, challenge is on the long haul, where it's still the technology question and the debate between hydrogen and electric, where I think the government is and government and a lot of OEM manufacturers are also would want to wait and watch the game. That's the biggest opposition that's coming. And also from the when I speak from the government side, there is a strong ministry of petroleum and natural gas, which is kind of importing a lot of oil. And if we transition this, it's a big threat to the ministry that is looking after petroleum and natural gas for the country. So those are the few big, strong oppositions that are there in India at the moment.
Yeah, thank you, Priti. Hiten, over to you.
Yeah, so I think in the South African case, as highlighted earlier, that the automotive industry is quite a well-established legacy industry within that. On that note, it's a significant industry in that pre-COVID was about 6.8 contribution to national GDP. 60% of the vehicles we manufacture in South Africa exported to Europe. And Europe has already announced the bans of ICE within those regions. So with that, South Africa is going to lose its principal markets of exports within that. And now the OEMs are challenged within that. They're saying that they're waiting for government to give them the right signals. But the flip side, what the OEMs now have done, they've set up a regional association to tackle Africa as the next frontier. My challenge within the room, is Africa going to become your dumping ground in terms of that, because of that? And this is the bigger questions within that. And that's where it is. The oppositions within the OEM saying, oh, Africa's not ready in terms of that. The technology is not ready for that. But technology is very ready for that. We just need the right enabling environments from that. It really comes down from also the strengthening aspect is political will. It stems from that, political commitment towards that. And within that, there's also vested interests along the different value chains to really slow down the transition within that. But it's multi-sectoral, it's multi-stakeholder roles that you have the oppositions within that. But this is where we need to now strengthen and challenge those resistance to try and advocate for the transition in that.
Great, yeah, thank you. And it's clear there's a lot of overlap with the barriers that you're facing to the barriers here in the US, the barriers in Europe, and all over the world. So I think we have a lot to learn from each other on how to tackle those on our road to 100% electric vehicles. To wrap us up, I wanted to highlight the top 2 questions in the app all kind of relate to the transition, right? So there's this idea of the roadmap to electrification in the regions where you guys are working. And the second question is around what happens to all the ICE vehicles when you replace them with EVs. And one of the things I wanted to actually kind of counter that, which is in a lot of emerging economies, it's not a one-to-one replacement. The countries are still, their motorization rate is still increasing. And there's this opportunity to leapfrog over internal combustion engine vehicles, to have a household have their very first vehicle be electric, whether it's a 2-wheeler, a 3-wheeler, or a 4-wheeler. And that's what's really key and why we really want to make sure that the entire community all over the world is supporting the advancement in emerging economies, is because the window of time that we have for that type of leapfrogging is ever closing. And to make the investments today in ensuring that leapfrogging can occur is key. And so I wanted to then transition that into just asking each of you in the last 3 minutes to quickly share one thought that you'd like the folks here today to come away with from your experience working where you work. And I'll start with Priti in the center, if that's all right with you.
Yeah. So in terms of thinking that India is a developing country and we might be far in the electric game is something that I would want to debunk the myth that India is really going strong in the electric game, and it's really moving fast, more faster than we all are thinking at the moment. And as philanthropy, as a not-for-profit, for the organization I'm representing, Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation, we are advocating electric mobility in a big way through all our partners, around 40+ partners that we work with, and not leaving any of the segments unturned, and making our interventions in terms of technical assistance, research, piloting, all of it, like supporting all of it through the partners that we work with. In all the areas, be it manufacturing, adoption, awareness, or charging infrastructure. We try to really push the electric game in the country as far as we can. But I would also like all of you to really connect with me or any one of us on if there are better ways that India can fasten this transition, and if there are any things that we can learn from the US story. That's something I'd like to leave a thought with.
Thank you so much, Priti. Hiten, we'll turn to you next.
Yeah, certainly. I also think collaboration is key, and so that with the highlights of shared what are the opportunities in Africa, we can then really strengthen global collaboration in advancing and leapfrogging within that. I think key also to note that sub-Saharan Africa is endowed with the mineral deposits to support the energy transition towards new energy vehicles, and how do we drive better global cooperation to advance that. The other point also what was mentioned there is global trade. One of the challenges also coming into play in dynamics is carbon border adjustments for that. So now sustainability is going to be priced against global trade. And how do we unlock the innovation that's happening all over the world to support this transition and collaborate for that, because there are opportunities. The global north can really assist the global south in leapfrogging the learned lessons and mistakes that regions have made, and why not pass those learned lessons so that we can make developments in these economies to support the transition sustainably. Yeah.
Thank you, Hiten. Sylvia, quickly. Over to you.
Sorry. Don't worry. No, I just want to say that in Latin America, what happens is that you don't replace an ICE car with EVs or without EVs. I mean, the ICE car, the car goes to a new driver. And I think that happens on the global south. That is a problem that we need to resolve. But the next step for us is to ban ICE cars, because we don't want to become the regions where the whole world send the ICE cars that they don't want. So then our next step in Latin America is to continue promoting 100% electric vehicles, but also to ban the ICE cars. So we are working on that.
Great, thank you so much. I'll do my best to kind of quickly wrap up, which is just to say that I think in each of the points that all three of you shared, collaboration is key. The learning across regions is key. So I encourage all of you to please find these amazing experts in the remaining time we have together. Reach out to them, ask them questions, share your experiences. They will share theirs. There is so much amazing leadership happening in emerging economies, and we don't hear about it enough here in the US. And my hope is that this is just the start of building roadmaps together. So thank you so much. Let's have a round of applause for these amazing panelists.
Thank you again, Rebecca, Sylvia, Hiten, and Priti for the great conversation and the thoughtful insights and snapshots to the regional landscapes for EV adoption in Chile, South Africa, and India. Good morning, everyone. We didn't learn our lesson all the way yesterday. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you. My name is Stefani Cuff, and I serve as the program director here at Fourth. It is my pleasure to remind you all of our agenda today and to remind you where we are in that agenda. So it is officially our break time, so you can get up and get that second cup of coffee, and please check out some of the exhibits here in the hall. We are also hosting power networking happening again in this room during this break, and there will be a mini session happening upstairs in the Oregon Ballroom in room 201 starting at 10:30. And the topic is how software solves key challenges in EV charging. I said that pretty fast, but it's in the Oregon Ballroom 201 at 10:30. Then at 11, we have our morning breakout sessions, which will be starting at 11, and we will see you back at the main stage for our closing keynote at 4:30. Our awesome topic will be a panel discussion on the critical actions to accelerate transportation electrification. And after we get that, and after we have that last absorption of industry best practice knowledge, we're going to be heading to Force After Party, which is at the Metropolitan Tavern with a live DJ and lots of great networking opportunities. So be sure to stick around for the fun, and thank you all.